A blessed day, everyone. We have now on another topic to be discussed, which is more about outcomes. At present, we all know that there was a shift of educational focus from content to learning outcomes. This is because at this period of time, we are having the curriculum which is more on OBE. And OBE stands for Outcomes Based Education. If we will try to recall education with its meaning, this term was originated from the term educare or educere, which means to draw out. We want to draw out the potentials of our students, their talents and abilities. But ironically, however, for centuries, we succeeded in perpetuating the belief that education is a process of pouring in, wherein the teacher was the infallible giver of knowledge and the student was just a passive recipient. Okay? But with the advent of technology, caused a big change on the perspective in education, both nationally and internationally. The teacher right now stopped to be the sole source of knowledge. With the knowledge explosions, then students are surrounded with various sources of facts and informations that are accessible through the use of the user-friendly technology. Right now, the teachers are just the facilitators of knowledge who used to assist in the organization, in the interpretation, and even with the validation of acquired facts and information. Now let's talk more about outcomes. Let us see. Okay. If you have seen a sample of the syllabus, you can observe there the different outcomes. Everything should start from the highest hierarchy, which is the institutional level. So we have there what we call the institutional outcomes. And this particular kind of outcome can be manifested only 4 to 5 years after graduation. And we classify this outcome as deferred outcomes. Down to program outcomes, we can have this upon graduation, while the course outcome upon the subject completion, and of course, the intended learning outcomes upon the lesson or topic completion. So everything should be vertically aligned. From the learning outcomes, moving to the course outcomes, program outcomes, and institutional outcomes. Okay. Now, under the institutional outcomes are the following: the mission, vision, college goals, and department objectives. While for the program outcomes, you can see there the program educational objectives and student outcomes. And of course, for the course outcomes, it depends on what subject we are handling as teachers. And for the learning outcomes, these are the intended learning outcomes we want our students to achieve or to attain or even to demonstrate. Now look at this example of a syllabus. There you are, the goals of the college or the campus and the objectives of the department. They are both under the institutional outcomes. And for the program outcomes, you can see there, these program educational objectives can be derived from the CHED memorandum order. It depends on the program. Like in our case, we have the Bachelor of Elementary Education, the Bachelor of Secondary Education, and the Bachelor of Early Childhood Education. They have different CMO 74, 75, and 76. All of these will state you the different program outcomes. Same thing with with the student outcomes in relation to the program educational objectives. And everything, as I've said, should be vertically aligned. Okay, and here are the course outcomes. Now, in this case, whatever will be the subject, that will always be the basis for your course outcomes. And there should always be a stem or a beginning sentence wherein at the end of the course, with whatever percent of proficiency that you want to attain, the student will be able to. And the verb that you have to use should always be something, verbs that are concrete, verbs that are specific, and direct and observable. Okay? Next one. What are the components of the outcomes-based education? First, we have the topic, which is the course content. Second is the intended learning outcomes, which is the ILO. Third is the teaching and learning activities, which is the TLA. And lastly, the OBA stands for outcomes-based assessment. All of these components should be aligned with one another. Okay, the alignment of the components is very important. Look at this figure. Both the assessment methods and the learning and teaching activities, they are both aligned with the intended learning outcomes. Both of them are designed to assess the learning outcomes. Okay, let me have an example. Example, let's say your verb is describe. You want to describe a professional teacher. Now, what possible teaching learning activities are you going to use? You can write an essay, you can make a report, you can set a set of lecture. It depends on the teacher. Well, what about the possible outcomes-based assessment? It can also be in the question exam, or a form of assignment, or a form of essay. But if you want to design something or create something like a project, automatically your TLA is also a project, and your possible OB is also a project. But if it is something reflective, and you want to reflect on the learning, on the experience based on your teaching, you can have the reflect diary and come up with a reflective diary or self-assessment. Now, what more about the intended learning outcome? Every time you will write a learning outcomes and basically the educational objectives, we have to consider always the Bloom's taxonomy. Now, talking about this Bloom's taxonomy, we have to mention the three important domains, such as cognitive, the affective, and psychomotor. Now, based on Bloom's taxonomy, we have to write our learning outcomes to make it more visible and to make it more understandable. Now, there are some important points to be considered in developing the intended learning outcomes. First, you have to keep your goals and outcomes aligned with the aims of education as being stated in the Philippine Constitution, the national goals of education, and the vision, mission, and goals of the institution. This is the one that I discussed to you a while ago, that there should be a vertical articulation of all the outcomes from the lower level to the higher level of hierarchy. Okay, next one. It should be smart. Smart, not low. Smart stands for S, which is specific. The verb that you have to use should be something that is specific. And MEM, it should be measurable. And A, it should be attainable. R, realistic. Or it can be researchable or result-oriented. And letter D, it's within the time bound or time frame. Refrain from using verbs such as to know, to understand, to comprehend, to learn, to appreciate. These are examples of broad verbs that cannot be measured. Let us try to observe always. Every now and then we are writing the intended learning outcomes. Be sure it is smart. Okay, and let us also state our learning outcomes as results, not processes. Because when we say processes, they are activities or strategies. Outcomes are ends, while activities are means. And state your objectives from the point of view of your learners, not from the point of view of the teachers. Always bear in mind we are outcomes-based education and our focus. No, our focus is the learner. So every time in writing objective, it should be on the point of view of our learners.